The email sat in my inbox like a digital bomb, the subject line innocent enough: family investment update. But Dad's words inside made my coffee turn cold in my hands. Alex, hope you're doing well at your government job. Had to make an executive decision about those old bonds in your portfolio. Ryan's tech startup is exploding, already has 3 clients lined up. Moved $50,000 from your securities to give him the capital injection he needs. Consider it an early inheritance. You'll thank me when he's the next Steve Jobs. Dad. I stared at the screen in my cramped Treasury Department cubicle, surrounded by stacks of financial regulation documents and my clearance badge hanging from a lanyard that screamed, "Government drone." That's what my family saw, their 28-year-old daughter who'd chosen the safe, boring path of federal employment while golden child Ryan chased his entrepreneurial dreams. What Dad didn't know was that those old bonds weren't some dusty savings account leftovers. They were Series I Treasury bonds purchased through my department's employee program, part of a carefully constructed portfolio worth $5.8 million. What he definitely didn't know was that selling them without my authorization constituted securities fraud, and transferring them to fund Ryan's venture violated about 12 federal regulations I could recite from memory. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "So proud of Ryan. Dad showed us the business plan. Finally, someone in this family is thinking big. Maybe working with him will teach you about real success instead of hiding behind government paperwork." I almost laughed. Real success. If only they knew I'd authored half the financial regulations they just violated, or that my government paperwork included briefing Treasury Secretary Williams monthly on cryptocurrency market threats. But I'd learned years ago that my family preferred the Ryan show, the flashy presentations, the big promises, the endless networking events where he'd introduce himself as the next big thing in fintech. Meanwhile, I'd quietly built a career identifying financial crimes that people like Ryan thought they were clever enough to commit. Another text from Ryan himself. "Thanks for the investment, sis. Dad said you're finally supporting family instead of auditing spreadsheets all day. This startup is going to revolutionize mobile payments. You'll get your money back tenfold." The irony was suffocating. Ryan's revolutionary mobile payment app was essentially a copy of existing platforms, wrapped in buzzwords and backed by a business plan that wouldn't pass a freshman economics course. But Dad had been writing checks for Ryan's ventures since college. The failed restaurant, the cryptocurrency trading firm that lasted 6 months, the consulting company that existed only on business cards. Every family gathering became a Ryan appreciation festival. Thanksgiving meant listening to his latest pitch while I carved turkey and stayed silent. Christmas involved Dad showing off Ryan's PowerPoint presentations to relatives while I washed dishes and answered deflecting questions about when I'd figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. "At least you have job security," Uncle Mark would say, patting my shoulder like I was a faithful golden retriever. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business like Ryan. What none of them understood was that my little government job had given me access to financial intelligence networks that tracked exactly the kind of schemes Ryan kept attempting. I'd seen dozens of startups like his collapse under regulatory scrutiny, watched federal prosecutors build cases around the same violations Dad had just committed on Ryan's behalf. But I'd never spoken up. Part of me had hoped Ryan would eventually mature, that Dad would recognize genuine achievement over flashy promises. I'd supported them financially for years, quietly covering Mom's medical bills and Dad's business loan payments while they praised Ryan's potential and worried about my lack of ambition. Now they'd crossed a line that made family loyalty irrelevant. Securities fraud wasn't a misunderstanding or poor judgment, it was a federal crime with mandatory minimum sentences. And Dad had committed it using my credentials, my portfolio, my carefully maintained financial reputation. I pulled up my secure Treasury Department email and began typing a message to Special Agent Rodriguez in financial crimes. We'd worked together on several white-collar cases, and I knew exactly what evidence she'd need to build an airtight prosecution. The bonds Dad had sold were actually frozen in a federal investigation I was personally overseeing. They couldn't be touched without triggering automatic alerts to 3 different agencies. His attempted transfer had been flagged the moment it hit the system. Tomorrow's family dinner was going to be very different from what Dad expected. Instead of celebrating Ryan's latest venture, they'd be explaining their actions to federal investigators. I attached Dad's email to my incident report and hit send, The next morning brought a flurry of family texts that painted a clear picture of the chaos unfolding at home. Dad's attempted transfer had been blocked by the brokerage, citing irregular account activity, but that only seemed to fuel his determination to access my funds. Ryan's messages showed increasing desperation. "Alex, there's some glitch with the transfer. Dad said you need to call your broker and authorize it manually. My investors are expecting the capital by Friday or the deal falls through. This is my big break." Then came Dad's increasingly frustrated calls. "Alexandra, I need you to straighten out this bureaucratic nonsense. Some computer system is blocking a simple family investment. You work in finance, fix it." I let them go to voicemail while reviewing the preliminary investigation report that had landed on my desk overnight. The attempted transaction had triggered automated alerts across multiple systems, flagging potential securities fraud, money laundering, and unauthorized asset transfer. Dad's digital fingerprints were all over documents he'd forged to claim power of attorney over my accounts. But the real revelation came when Agent Rodriguez forwarded me Ryan's business registration documents. His startup, NextGen Financial Solutions, was essentially a shell company with no actual employees, no legitimate business address, and no registered intellectual property. The 3 clients he'd mentioned to Dad were fictitious companies Ryan had created using stolen business registration numbers. Mom's lunch invitation text felt surreal. "Family meeting today at 2 p.m. Dad wants to discuss your investment strategy. Ryan's bringing his business partner to explain the opportunity. Wear something professional for once." Professional. I almost laughed as I straightened my Treasury Department badge. They wanted professional. They were about to get federal law enforcement professional. The investigation had accelerated beyond what I'd expected. Ryan's fake business had been connected to 2 other fraud schemes targeting elderly investors, and Dad's attempt to access my bonds had provided the final piece of evidence prosecutors needed. The U.S. Attorney's Office was already preparing charges. I drove to my childhood home through familiar suburban streets, past Ryan's BMW parked in the driveway next to Dad's aging Mercedes, both financed through loans I'd unknowingly guaranteed through various family financial arrangements they'd manipulated over the years. Inside, the dining room had been transformed into Ryan's presentation space. His laptop connected to Dad's big-screen TV, displaying slides full of cryptocurrency buzzwords and blockchain diagrams that made no technical sense. Mom had set out her good china like this was a corporate boardroom instead of a family intervention. Finally, Dad announced as I walked in. "Alexandra, meet David Chin, Ryan's business partner and head of investor relations." David looked about 22, wearing an ill-fitting suit and carrying a briefcase that probably contained more fake business documents. He shook my hand enthusiastically, clearly having been briefed about their government employee sister who needed convincing. "Your father explained the situation," David said, his practiced pitch voice immediately recognizable. "We understand you work in financial compliance? This investment opportunity is completely above board, fully regulated. We just need to expedite the transfer process." Ryan jumped in, his confidence infectious as always. "Alex, you're always worried about regulations and paperwork. This is family. Dad already approved the investment strategy. We just need your signature to confirm the account access." They slid documents across the table, power of attorney forms, investment agreements, and what appeared to be financial statements showing my bond portfolio as idle assets, suitable for aggressive growth opportunities. Mom beamed at Ryan like he was presenting the cure for cancer. "Isn't it wonderful? Finally, our children are working together. Ryan's business acumen and your financial background, it's perfect." Dad nodded approvingly. "I knew you'd come around once you saw the numbers. Ryan's projected returns are incredible. Much better than those boring government bonds you've been hoarding." I picked up the power of attorney document, noting the forged elements and fabricated legal language that would make any real attorney cringe. "This is interesting paperwork, Ryan. Very creative." "David handled the legal structure," Ryan said proudly. "He's got experience with complex financial instruments." David's smile wavered slightly as I continued examining the documents. Something in my expression must have shifted, because the room's energy began to change. "Is there a problem?" Dad asked, irritation creeping into his voice. "We're offering you a chance to finally make real money instead of pushing papers for the government." I looked around the table at my family: Dad's expectant arrogance, Mom's hopeful smile, Ryan's practiced confidence, and David's increasingly nervous energy. They had no idea what was about to happen. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Rodriguez. "Teams in position. Ready when you are." I set down the fraudulent documents and smiled. "Actually, Dad, there is a problem. A big one." The doorbell rang before Dad could respond, and the dining room fell silent as the sound echoed through the house. I stood up calmly, straightening my Treasury Department badge where everyone could see it clearly. "That would be Special Agent Rodriguez from Financial Crimes," I said, watching their faces transform from confusion to alarm. "And probably Agent Williams from Securities Fraud. I asked them to arrive at 2:30. David shot up from his chair, his briefcase clutched against his chest. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. I should probably—" "Sit down, David," I said firmly. "Or should I say, David Chen, age 22, currently wanted in 3 states for investor fraud and identity theft?" Dad's face went pale. "Alexandra, what the hell are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you committed federal securities fraud yesterday when you attempted to liquidate my bond portfolio without authorization. I'm talking about Ryan's fake business being used to launder money from elderly fraud victims. And I'm talking about the fact that I'm not just some low-level government clerk." I walked to Dad's TV and pulled up my Treasury Department credentials on my phone, displaying them on the screen. "I'm Senior Financial Crimes Analyst Alexandra Mitchell. I've spent the last 4 years investigating securities fraud, money laundering, and cryptocurrency crimes. Those boring government bonds you tried to steal? They're worth $5.8 million and they're currently evidence in a federal investigation that I've been leading." Mom's china cup hit the table with a crash. $5.8 million? The bonds I purchased through Treasury's employee investment program over the past 6 years. The same bonds that triggered automatic federal alerts the moment Dad tried to access them illegally. I turned to Ryan, whose confident smirk had completely disappeared. "Your next-gen financial solutions doesn't exist, Ryan. The business registration is fake, your clients are fictitious companies, and your business partner here is wanted by the FBI." Agent Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, her badge visible and her expression professional but stern. "Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Ryan Mitchell, Mr. Chin, I'm Special Agent Rodriguez, Financial Crimes Division. We have warrants for your arrest on charges of securities fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and wire fraud." Behind her stood 3 more agents, their presence filling the dining room with the weight of federal authority. Dad found his voice, though it cracked with panic. "This is insane. He's my daughter. This is family business, not federal." "Mr. Mitchell," Agent Rodriguez interrupted, "attempting to liquidate $5.8 million in federal securities without authorization isn't family business. It's a federal crime with a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years. Ryan finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Alex, you're really worth almost $6 million? And I've been quietly supporting this family for years while you all told me I lacked ambition," I replied. "Covering Mom's medical bills, Dad's failed business loans, even Ryan's credit card debt, all while working cases that could have put you in prison if I hadn't kept my professional and personal lives separate." Agent Rodriguez stepped forward with handcuffs. Until now, the confident family meeting had become a federal arrest scene, and there was nowhere left for any of them to run. 6 months later, I sat in my new corner office at Treasury headquarters, reviewing the case files that had completely transformed my family's understanding of success and consequences. Dad received 8 years in federal prison for securities fraud and attempted money laundering. His desperate attempt to access my bonds had connected him to Ryan's larger fraud network, making him a key conspirator rather than just a misguided father. His business collapsed, his assets were seized, and Mom was forced to sell their house to cover legal fees. Ryan got 12 years for running a multi-state investment fraud scheme. David Chen's cooperation had revealed the full scope of their operation: dozens of elderly victims, forged business documents, and a cryptocurrency laundering network that had operated for 2 years. The revolutionary startup had been nothing more than an elaborate theft machine. Mom moved to a small apartment across town, finally working a retail job at 63 after years of living off Dad's schemes and my secret financial support. She'd stopped calling after the trial, unable to reconcile her government clerk daughter with the federal agent who'd destroyed her family's criminal enterprise. The extended family scattered like roaches when the story hit local news. Uncle Mark's social media went dark after journalists started asking about his own investment strategies. The relatives who'd patronized me at family gatherings suddenly discovered they barely knew us. I kept the bonds, their value growing steadily in legitimate Treasury investments. The $5.8 million represented security I'd built while being dismissed as unambitious, success I'd achieved while being told I lacked vision. My new role as Senior Director of Financial Crimes paid significantly better than my old position, and my successful prosecution of the family fraud case had earned recognition throughout the department. Real recognition based on competence rather than promises. Sometimes I missed having a family. But I didn't miss being invisible to the people who should have seen me clearly all along. The federal investigation was complete. The consequences were permanent. And I was finally free.